They once finished top 3 for the season at their position, but now they're ranked outside the top 20 at their position. Are they finished? What is going on, Headliner Nation? Hopefully everyone's doing well out there today. We're talking about 5 players who used to be the best of the best. Now here in 2024, they are falling so far down draft boards, they just seem to be forgotten. That's why today we're going to go through their 2024 fantasy football outlook and see, do they have one last gasp at fantasy relevance? But first, real quick, I have a question for you. Have you gotten your 2024 fantasy football draft guide yet? If not, you need to right now because draft season is right around the corner. So be sure to head over to tfhdraftguide.com to get yours right now. Now, if you're a fan of deals, you can get a free draft guide by signing up for a new account over on Underdog Fantasy. Just sign up for a new account there, use the referral code Headliners when you do so. Once you make your initial deposit, you're gonna get some free things. The first one being a 2024 fantasy football draft guide. There's already content up there, and we're going to continue to add to it and update it all the way up until week 1 of the NFL season. But Underdog is also going to add a special pick to your account and give you a first-time deposit bonus of up to $250 in bonus cash. Or if you're the type that just wants to play the lottery, just hit the like button on this video. As soon as this video gets 800 likes on it, which it's going to, I'm going to pick a random commenter from down below and just give them a free draft guide. So you know what to do. Hit the like button, leave your comments down below, and let's take a look at the first player who's on the verge of being finished. And we've talked about him some already this offseason, but I feel like we need to again. It's Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. He's currently the quarterback 20 overall. Now, obviously, we know in his past, in his career, he's finished as the number 1 overall quarterback before. And there is no denying that talent-wise, this Jets team is going to be one of the best overall teams in the NFL right now on paper. Now, over the last 3 years, on average, the quarterback 20 scores right around 217.1 fantasy points a year. That is a number that Aaron Rodgers has exceeded in 13 of his last 16 seasons. The 3 years that he didn't hit that number, he played in less than 10 games. So when we hear that 217.1 fantasy number, what does that look like in the form of a stat line? Well, now the guy is 40 years old, he's coming off a torn Achilles, and we know he's not going to run very much. So from a passing standpoint, he's going to have to need to be in the neighborhood of 3,500 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Can you guess how many times over his last 16 years of playing that he's hit that stat line? Yeah, 13 out of 16 seasons. The 3 years he didn't were the same 3 years he didn't even play in 10 games. So basically, the for dummies version of that is if Aaron Rodgers plays a full season, the quarterback 20 number is a given, right? He's going to pass those numbers. He's done it every single year he's been healthy. Now, we know the Jets have gone out and done some work on their offensive line here this offseason. They know they need to protect their aging quarterback. They got one of the best left tackles all time in the NFL in Tyron Smith over from the Dallas Cowboys. They brought over left guard John Simpson from Baltimore. They brought back right tackle Morgan Moses from Baltimore as well. But then, on top of all of that, in the first round, they spent a top 10 overall pick on one of the best offensive linemen in the draft in Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. And we also can't forget that right guard Elijah Vera Tucker should be back and healthy this season. They have arguably the best offensive line the Jets have had in quite some time. How about running game? We know Breece Hall is that dude. Whether it's running the ball or catching check down passes, he's one of the best in the league. He's going to give Aaron Rodgers more receivers on the outside with single coverage. They're going to have to keep defenders in the box to stop Breece Hall. And if you give Aaron Rodgers one-on-one coverage on the outside, more times than not, he's probably going to beat you. Especially when he has one of the best young wide receivers in Garrett Wilson. We've already heard how much Aaron Rodgers loves this kid and has some super high expectations for him. Look what Wilson has done with crappy quarterback play the last 2 years. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and he's had to deal with Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco, Chris Streveler, Trevor Siemian, and Tim Boyle as his quarterbacks. Even a 40-year-old quarterback coming off a torn Achilles in Aaron Rodgers is light years better than those quarterbacks. They also brought in Mike Williams over from the Chargers. Now, obviously, he struggled to stay on the field, but when he is a top 24 overall wide receiver in the NFL. But wait, there is more. The Jets also spent their third-round pick on wide receiver Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. This guy is one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite wide receivers in the draft. He already came out and said that, and it's really because his skill set fits exactly what the Jets need on offense. He is an underneath yak monster. Since 2022, Corley led all collegiate wide receivers in yards after the catch, yak yards, with 1,658. So we're going to give Aaron Rodgers two studs on the outside with Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams, throw Corley in the slot, Breece in the backfield, and a good offensive line. I have a feeling that we haven't seen the end of Aaron Rodgers just yet. If you were to sit here today and tell me that Aaron Rodgers was going to throw for over 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions, I wouldn't think you're crazy at all. And that is a damn good year. And it completely blows out of the water the quarterback 20 where he's being drafted. He may just have one more last go at some high-end fantasy production. All right, next guy, Austin Ekeler, the current running back 34 for the Washington Commandos. Now, that's still weird to think about, but we know that Ekeler's had some RB1 overall seasons in the past. I just feel like we're sleeping too much on Austin Ekeler. I don't know if we're going to see those high-end performances, but running back 34? Last year's running back 34 was Tyler Algier, and he didn't even start the entire season. We know that Ekeler was banged up and dealing with contract issues the majority of 2023. It led to a really bad year, a year in which he still averaged 11.4 fantasy points per game in half PPR scoring. He also had over 1,000 total yards and 6 touchdowns. 3 of the last 5 years, Ekeler has finished with over 1,500 total yards. The 2 years he didn't were due to injury. He missed 6 games in 2020, and then the 3 games just last season. So yeah, he may not be a 1,500-yard guy anymore, but look at last year. In a crap year, he still had over 1,000 total yards, 6 touchdowns, and 51 receptions. But now he goes to Washington. It's no longer Ron Rivera, a new coaching regime in Washington with head coach Dan Quinn and offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. And that's really where we need to focus for a second, because Kingsbury is the man behind turning Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds into fantasy assets, as well as the dude who revitalized the career of James Conner in Arizona. Now, sure, Austin Ekeler has some red flags. Like I said, he's not that 1,500-yard guy anymore. He's 30 years old. But really, I don't put as much on age as maybe a lot of other people do. Over his career, he's only had 1 season over 300 touches. And 3 of the 7 years of his career, he's had less than 175 total touches. He isn't some overworked type running back. There's still tread on the tires. We have ourselves a very capable running back in this backfield already, though, in Brian Robinson. That's going to hurt Austin Ekeler as well. But B-Rob was an old regime guy, but don't read too much into that. They're still going to utilize him heavily here in this offense. But there's still a reason they brought over Austin Ekeler. They didn't just bring him over to have him ride the bench. I fully expect to see B-Rob on the majority of early down work. But we've also heard Dan Quinn come out here as of late and say the pass-catching upside of Brian Robinson has improved tremendously here this offseason. We also have a new franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels out of LSU, a mobile quarterback who isn't really known for checking down to his running backs. It's not something he really did in college. So when you look at Austin Ekeler, we're really kind of drafting him at his floor. We already know what his ceiling is, and that's not something we can really expect this year. I don't think we ever see top 3 overall Ekeler again, but top 24 Ekeler, still in the cards. Which will then take us to Cooper Kupp, the current wide receiver 21 overall. We all know just a couple years ago that he had that magical wide receiver 1 overall season. But now Puka Nacua comes along, and Cooper Kupp is ignored worse than a side chick in public. We are a long time removed from that Cinderella season in 2021. We now have back-to-back years where injuries have caused him to miss games. In fact, it's 13 total games over the last 2 seasons to be exact. But when he's healthy, when he's on the field, He's a top 12 to 15 option at the wide receiver position, but he just isn't the only show in town anymore. We know Puka has arrived, but we also can't forget about the likes of Demarcus Robinson, who is a top 24 overall fantasy wide receiver between the weeks of 13 and 18 just last season. Definitely got a role late in the year and did something with it. Then they brought him back in free agency here this offseason. But we also have Tutu Atwell, Tyler Higbee, and that stud backfield of Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. Stafford no longer needs to force the ball every single time to Cooper Kupp each and every game. No other wide receiver in LA had over 90 targets in 2021. 2021 is the year that Cooper Kupp went off, and he had 191 targets that season. We could definitely see 3 wide receivers all hit 90 targets or higher in this offense this year in LA. Plus, he's another guy on the wrong side of 30. He's going to be 31 at the time of the NFL season kicking off, but I'm not ready to say he's just finished. He may be top 10 finished, but with the connection between him and Matthew Stafford, he still has to be a top 24 option. One more injury though, and that could be the last chapter of Cooper Kupp. Where he's being drafted is where I feel comfortable drafting him. How about Keenan Allen, now the Chicago Bears, currently the wide receiver 31 overall. Keenan has a top 3 overall finish at the position in his career, but he is the former target hog in LA, and now he goes to Chicago, where he's going to be fighting for targets like a mofo. We have ourselves a rookie quarterback that not only has Keenan Allen, but he also has DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, and DeAndre Swift in the backfield. But let's not also forget that this defense is very much improved in Chicago. If they can get more late game leads, they may not have to rely on throwing the ball as much this year. But when we look at Keenan Allen, we have ourselves a 32-year-old wide receiver who has now struggled to stay on the field for the last 2 seasons. But we cannot just ignore what he was doing last year when he was on the field. In just 13 games, he had 150 targets, 108 receptions, 1,243 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns, and finished as the wide receiver 8 overall on the season, and missed 4 games. The dude was absolutely balling when he was 31 years old. I'm pretty sure he could do it once again when he's 32 if he's able to get the volume. But that right there is what's going to be super hard. Now, from an NFL perspective, a team perspective, he is an absolute perfect fit for this team. Veteran leadership, a safety blanket option for Caleb Williams. But Keenan has had at least 135 targets in 6 of the last 7 years he's played. How is that going to happen with all of the weapons in Chicago? We also have no idea what to expect from Caleb Williams. We think he's going to go out there and absolutely kill it, but we don't know that. We haven't seen that before. If I'm being honest, when I look at Keenan Allen, I really see him in the neighborhood of 75 catches for 850 yards and right around 6 touchdowns this season. That's good enough for him to be in the neighborhood, to be a low-end wide receiver 2, a high-end wide receiver 3. But when it comes to top 5 seasons, those days are finished. How about Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the wide receiver 35 overall right now? And in case you forgot, Chris Godwin has finished as the wide receiver 2 overall in his career in the past. The dude has had 1,000 yards receiving in 4 of the last 5 seasons, and no one really talks about him anymore. With the new offensive coordinator, though, Liam Cohen, he has already come out and said that he wants to utilize Chris Godwin more in the slot. And when he's in the slot, he absolutely thrives. That right there is something that me and Chris Godwin definitely have in common. But the 2 best seasons that Godwin has had in the NFL, he's finished top 12 among all wide receivers in slot snaps those years, with over 400 snaps out of the slot. For whatever reason, though, they just didn't put him inside very much last season. But did you happen to notice what happened towards the end of 2023? Godwin was put in the slot a lot more the last 5 games of the season. Over that span, he was the wide receiver 10 overall in fantasy football and outscored Mike Evans. We know Baker Mayfield is back. This defense is weaker than it has been in years past, which means Tampa Bay could be trailing more and throwing the ball even more to keep pace. We have an offensive coordinator that already knows that Chris Godwin needs to go in the slot. We know that Baker Mayfield targeted Chris Godwin while he was in the slot. We have other wide receivers on the depth chart like Trey Palmer, Sterling Shepard, and Jalen McMillian. Great depth, but not really a threat to Chris Godwin. If anything, I can see Jalen McMillian being opposite of Mike Evans on the outside, really giving defenses a fit. They can't cover all three of these guys, and Godwin in the slot in mismatches could be fantasy gold. He's only 28 years old, he's fully healthy, and with Mike Evans racking up the touchdowns, we may not see top 2 overall Chris Godwin anymore, but he is not finished by any means. If anything, he's a discount. So remember, don't always fall for the shiny new piece in fantasy football. Each and every year, veteran studs will slide during your fantasy football draft just because they're not a sexy pick anymore. I don't care how sexy they are, I want fantasy points. Now, if you agree with that, be sure to hit the like button and leave a comment down below. What do you feel about some of these aging studs and where they're going at their current ADP? But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for the day. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so now. It greatly helps out the channel. But I do hope you have a great rest of your day, and then most importantly, do your part to make the world a better place.